Hello and welcome to the Macca's Talk Hockey podcast where me and Dan, and we are joined by a special guest as well, which we'll introduce in a second, talk about English ice hockey, specifically the NIHL. Charlie has bottled another podcast, Dan. The season's ended and he's already taken another night off. Is that a shock to you?
No, I'm used to it now.
Yeah, he was like, I'm really tired. I'm just gonna go and chill in
Mm.
my room.
Yeah, it's
So
because
we,
he was up late night watching Colorado, so he's
yeah,
still catching up on all of
he's an ultra now for Colorado. Me and Dan are really
that.
hoping they lose, just so he shuts up. But we are joined by a special guest. He's been on once before, and I thought it's probably good timing to get him on, considering the positive news, which him and Dan have been waiting for over 2 years now. We've got Mr. Anthony Russell from Banners on the Wall, and you've got a smile on your face. How excited are you for next season? We're going to go into it in a minute. I'll talk about what the plan is for this episode. But how excited are you?
Cautious optimism, Jack, is the bywords of the day right now. Nothing is set until everything is set. I will say this though, because Dan will be aware. I have rescued the beer bottle out from its corner of the kitchen and have put it in a slightly different place, so it's a bit easier to hand now. But yeah, it's certainly interesting news. It's positive news. Obviously, a lot of people are making things about the Bison, but until we get the Bison back, the Buffalo, the juniors, the ladies, the skaters, the synchro dancers, until we're all back, the job is not done. I think would be my stance on that. But it is fantastic news, of course, because the Bison were and are the town's flagship sporting organisation. With all due respect to Basingstoke Town and Basingstoke
That is true.
RFC, who've done fantastic work in our absence, particularly Town, who've done some really, really good work in terms of what they've been able to do. But we're not all the way back there yet, but the light is at the end of the tunnel. The mist is clearing, as it were.
Yeah, well, with all signs and plans ahead, you are listed to be ready or to compete next season. So that is what as the message has been put out there. And the plan for this episode, as we did last off season, we're going to go through all of the signing news, all of the re-signings. There's a couple of players who've left as well, which we'll go through. So we'll go through all of that news. We'll talk a bit about GB as well, because they've just finished their second game today. Then I'm going to quiz, or not quiz, ask a few questions to Dan and Anthony, obviously, with them being Bison fans, what they're expecting for the new season, maybe who they might want to come in, for example. And then we're going to end it with a nice little bit of fun. We're going to go through each team, all 12 teams in the national, and we're going to give our say on who they should sign. Not specific players, but maybe what area they need to improve on going into next season. Obviously, we've got the four imports now, so where should they put their import eggs into? Which positions do they go for? Netminders? Do they get defensemen? So we're going to go through every team briefly and quickly just list off maybe what they need to improve on. But we're going to start with the news then. Actually, before we get into the national news, GB obviously have completed their second game in group, well, the second division, I think it's called,
Division
and
1A is the
Division
official
1A,
title of
yeah.
it.
And they're looking to try and get back up to the top, but they have already dropped 2 points. They have won twice, but they have dropped 2 points. And Dan, I actually quite like the way they do the system because I know GB have gone to overtime twice, but it kind of does force teams to try and get that extra point in regulation.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like the way they've done the points as well. It it's definitely something obviously that's been spoken about, like bringing into the
Yeah,
National League. Obviously, the national one do it, don't they? They
yeah,
they
yeah.
do
All of
they
them, National One, Two.
yeah. So I think it would definitely be an interesting thing to see in the National League, but it it does because obviously GB they need those points. So
Yeah,
even though they're winning these games, it's not like it's not all happy days because they are still dropping that 1 point. And in the end, those points that they've dropped, even though they've won the games, could be crucial. And obviously, GB are looking to get up to the top flight again. They've always seemed to be that boomerang of just going up and down, up and down. So yeah, it will be interesting to see, but GB needs to start getting those regulation wins going.
yeah. Well, they've win twice. Well, what the first one was on penalty shots, and they were 2-0 up actually. They then went 3-2 down. had a goal chalked off, but then the new Swindon signing, which we'll come on to in a bit, in a bit more detail, he tied it up 3 apiece. He then scored on the shootout. Bound saved all 4. Lake finished it off. So they got the 2 points there. And then today, against Romania, who are the hosts, so obviously they've got the home crowd backing them. 1-1. They literally scored 30 seconds into the game. Josh Waller, who I've been really impressed with, and I'll ask you about him in a second, Anthony, because you've watched a lot of him this season. But he opened the scoring. Romania tied it up in that first period. There wasn't a goal for the rest of the game until overtime, where Cade Nielsen banged it in. And he's kind of been, for me, him and Waller have kind of been the 2 guys who GB have had to kind of rely on for the points and the goals with Liam Kirk's absence. And how impressed have you been with Waller at Guildford? He's kind of, since that injury, he's kind of hit the best form he can get, really.
He's probably been Guildford's most consistent British player across the course of this year, all things considered. And I mean, Lewis Hook has been very, very good in fits and spurts, but I think we've kind of seen why he's moved out of GB sort of national team contention a little bit, just because some of those younger guys are coming through that Pete Russell's wanted to do. Waller's great. I really enjoy Josh Waller. If anything, during the Elite League games I've watched of him, I wish he'd shoot more, but he just seems to be in the right place at the right time. His positioning is generally pretty sound. The thing for GB, I think Kirk coming in will obviously massively improve our firepower, which will help a little bit, or if nothing else, the guy who's just won the DEL championships turned up. Maybe we should mark him, and that will, of course, let off a massive amount of space for everybody else to kind of do the job. GB also, of course, benefit from the fact that it's 2 up as well to go back into the World Pool. We don't have to finish top. We can finish second and still gain promotion back to the World Pool. Ultimately, the bigger thing, I think, was kind of not going down, not getting so knocked back by what happened last year. We're a program in transition, if we're honest with ourselves. You know, a lot of those guys are much closer to the end than the beginning. So if being able to hold 1A this year, I think really has to be the main thing. If we go back up to Worlds, magic, everyone's going to enjoy that, being on the big stage again. But probably
players as well, yeah.
Yeah, and get guys like the the Nielsens are still very, very young guys. Kieran Brown, of course, in his first proper international tournament that should have come 3 years ago, Pete. But the opportunity to kind of just perform at a high level, I think is important. And 1A is pretty solid as well, irrespective of who will come down and who will kind of come up. This might be a good chance to go up this year just because of who might come down, but we'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. 2 wins is a win. Wins are wins, right? Even if they drop points, wins are wins.
The 2 teams which are projected to be the ones which you want to beat are Italy and Poland. Obviously, Poland come down as well. Charlie actually downstairs claims he's a Poland fan. So he said if it goes to that final game, he's going to be supporting Poland.
That guy's deluded.
We know why that is, Mr. Tomash. But we will be supporting GB, and I believe Kirk should be back for Wednesday actually, because they've got a rest. So I think he's being flown back, and then he should be able to play Wednesday. And also, just a quick one out there. They literally finished the season last season. I heard on comms, I've forgotten the commentator's name, but he does a great job. He was saying that the year before in the top division, they get an extra week and a half to prepare, whereas they've had to go straight into it. So they haven't had any warm-up games, no practice. And I think that showed they didn't score on 2, 5 on 3. So I think it shows a bit of lack of playing together. But as you said, Anthony, they got the wins. Kieran Brown looked like he fit in really well, and Charlie made a good point, actually. They're playing him on the top 6 or playing him with 2 solid players. And I think that kind of benefits GB because a lot of GB's team are 3rd, 4th liners in the Elite League, whereas Brown is a top liner. He is the man for Leeds Knights. So it's not a bad idea, Dan, putting Brown into the top lines for GB because that's what his role is in the national. Where I know he's not playing in the Elite League, but he's still scoring at a ridiculous rate in the 2nd best league in England.
Yeah, I mean, you always see it. You always see these guys, like, obviously talking about the Elite League, you see these young Brits go up to the Elite League and they get used as, like 3rd, 4th liners. And it's like, obviously, they come in from the National League, being that guy, being the top line guy. He can run a line, and then he goes into a team in the Elite League. And it's obviously, he gets used in a role that he's probably never played in. He's not like Kieran Brown isn't a guy that's going to go around throwing the hits, just like four check in, getting those top guys to obviously give him rest. He's the guy that needs to be given the puck in the areas. He'll put the puck away. Um, so yeah, it's quite a smart move from Pete Russell to obviously put Brown into that situation that he's going to be used to being in.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be a lot more different surroundings for him because it's obviously international stage. You've got the players around you that you're not used to playing with, but the whole situation of being that guy in that position is still the same, and it will come for Kieran Brown. And I think it's perfect that he's been put into that role instead of being on that third and fourth line because you're just not going to get what you need from Kieran Brown in those positions.
Yeah, I agree. But obviously it will be interesting. I think the lines will be switched up a tad again when Kirk comes down. But yeah,
Yeah.
anything else to add, Anthony? Good to see. I know people moan about the goaltending and there's not enough British goaltenders coming up, but flipping heck, Jackson Whistle and Ben Bounds are putting in a shift. Whistle getting a 9.6 save percentage today, and Bounds obviously having a really good game yesterday. So you can't argue against the British goaltending duo for GB.
There are more than enough British netminders coming up, Jack. We actually have to play them. That's the bigger issue right
I
now.
get
We have
that.
a
I
really
get
good,
that.
we have a
Yeah.
good glut of kids between the ages of about 15 and 18 at the moment who are going to be very, very good in the future, provided they get the opportunities. Ultimately, the two best British netminders that we have at the highest level, which is Ben Bounce and Jackson Whistle, are at the World Championships. No issue with that whatsoever. But the people who moan that the netminding talent isn't coming through, it's all there. They haven't magically disappeared or anything like that, but someone has to actually do something with them. Lucas Bryan has obviously had the opportunity to get some minutes this year. But you think of Britton Priest, who was at Fife and has just sort of disappeared off the radar entirely. There was absolutely no reason why he shouldn't have been playing 15, 20 games in the Elite League this year, really, given the amount of rubber he faced in Slough the year before. But no, Jackson Whistle's been fantastic this season. He's not won two trophies this year with Belfast for no reason. And yeah, admittedly, having that kind of a defensive core in front of you will do wonders for your confidence. But he's beaten out a guy who was on the Red Wings roster for the starting job in Belfast. Like, Jackson Whistle is a good netminder. I personally thought that we were going to see him as the starter over Bounds because I think whilst Ben Bounds had a really good end to the season, the body of work across the entire season, I think favours Whistle to be the starter in the big games. But of course, as you've already mentioned, Italy and Poland are our big opponents in terms of qualification to go up. We will see who gets the starts, and actually allowing both Bounds and Whistle kind of the opportunity, actually kind of doing what Guildford did. Guildford literally split their two netminders. They played the exact same amount of games all the way through the Challenge Cup and the league, right until the playoffs where Eamon McAdam took the net. Given the opportunity, letting them play against the teams with all due respect to Ukraine and Romania, who we kind of expected to do better against. And then the man with the hot hand should get the big games. And then if we lose to, I can't remember off the top of my head who we're playing first, but if we, if Whistle's in net and we beat Italy and then we play Poland, then Whistle should keep the net. If we play Whistle and he loses, then we can play Bounds. We've got at least the option where both of them are quality enough at 1A level where either of them could and should start. For me, I'm favouring Whistle at the moment just because I think he's had the better year.
Yeah, I think it's actually a nice little headache Pete Russell now has because both of them have done well in their first games, or first two games. And we'll talk a bit more about import netties, I'm sure in the last little bit, which we do when we go through all the teams. But from one netty talking point to another, we'll start with the signing news. Mr. Jordan Marr, he literally signed the day before, day after we filmed last week, but he has signed back for Solway. I actually think he got player of the season, I think, for Solway. I think they chose him as player of the season, or he got one of the awards. And I think next season, Dan, Solway have got to protect him a bit more. Obviously, he got that protection a bit more in Peterborough, and you've seen how good he can be, especially come that back end of the season. And I think next season, we'll talk a bit more about it with the Solway, but it is, what Jordan Marr can do, and I think he'll have an even more improved season. So it was a bit of a change for him, wasn't it, last season going to a new team?
Yeah, it is going to be different, but the thing is with teams is that goalie position is so important. And if you can get a guy like Jordan Marr, who's obviously had the experience in the National League, he's won trophies on the big stage, he's been unbelievable in Peterborough, he's obviously coming home to Solway. And now Solway have got him. Like you said, they need to protect him. Um, they were no doubt going to lock him up for next season because he's obviously a Scottish lad. I can't imagine him going back down now. I can imagine him staying up there. Um, but once you've got that goalie position locked in, you've got that foundation of your defence. So now you can sort of start working on what players you're going to have in front of him because it's not rocket science. If you've got a goalie like that and you protect him, he's going to save the shots. Like if you leave him hang out to dry, he's going to save some, but he's not going to save everything. So if Solway are going to have a good chance next season, they do need to protect a guy like Jordan Marr because he will win them games.
Yeah, and they've already got Kel Beattie and Stenton signed up, which is really positive. I really like Stenton. Me and you both really like him, Dan, and sky's the limit for him. And I think that's two solid signings back, but they also need help. They can't play 30 minutes every night, can they? So it'd be interesting to see you Solway sign in that defensive corner. I have no doubts that with maybe that extra import, you never know. But Jordan Marr's back. I briefly spoke about Ben O'Connor last week, but it was only for a couple minutes, and it probably is going to be the biggest Brit signing in the off season. There's a couple of others as well. Obviously, we'll talk about Batchy in a minute, but that is a statement signing for Swindon, isn't it, Anthony? And obviously, he's with GB now. He had a good little first game offensively. What can we expect from Ben O'Connor?
Well, if there was a signing to type, then Ben O'Connor going to the Swindon Wildcats is very much a signing to type because the team that loves to play long outlet passes signed the guy who's been doing an entire career of it. He's very much in that kind of offensive mold. He will massively suit Swindon's style. I can 100% see why. After he's all made this decision to kind of step away from the elite league, he's based in Guildford now. So obviously he was more than likely he was going to step away from what they keep saying is professional hockey, which senior hockey. We're in Britain. If he was going to step away from that, he was obviously going to want to stay closer to the south. Whether he'd want to come back to Basingstoke again after the last time, who knows? But Swindon are a team in the mould that will fit the style that he plays. Wildcats fans are going to really enjoy him because of the way that he plays. If Wells, for example, doesn't come back, which is happens with imports, they will come and disappear off after a year. But you've got a ready-made replacement. The fact that you have signed Ben O'Connor does make me wonder about whether Wells is returning because it's kind of a like-for-like swap in a lot of ways. But Ben O'Connor is probably one of the defining British defensemen of his generation alongside Mark Richardson, almost to a fault in some ways for British hockey because we spent the last 10 years trying to make Ben O'Connors and Mark Richardsons without really trying to make many Mark Thomases into the bargain. We're not great as a nation with having lots of stay-at-home defensemen of age right now. But O'Connor's quality. If he tries to do another through the legs move in the shootout, some poor keeper's going to get embarrassed to the end of the earth.
Yeah, his shootout goal is nasty, wasn't it, Dan, yesterday? Even the little move, he may be 36, but he's still got the moves. And I would say Swindon's penalty shots ain't the greatest over the years. So at least that's something added to it. And the power play as well, I mentioned, Dan. But with Ben O'Connor, if we are comparing him to Wells, obviously I'd love Wellesley to stay. We don't know if he is staying or not. I think offensively we didn't quite see the best of Wells because he was covering so much defensively, and I think he proved why. He was the best defensive player in the league. I think you're going to get a lot more offense with Ben O'Connor, and to add him onto that power play as well. We should score a lot more goals, I think, from defence this season. And you'll probably have that 1-2 punch of O'Connor and Bradley, who I expect will be on separate lines.
Yeah, I think they should definitely be on separate lines. Yeah. Otherwise, you have no D.
5 forwards on the 5-on-5.
Malas will be having to track, or Glenn Billen will having to track back all the time.
Hey, Aaron, if you do that, that's when Edgar's Bebrus can actually be a defenseman for the first time ever.
But yeah, it's you're definitely going to see a different style. He's definitely a different style player to Wells. Obviously, you're going to see a difference between an import and a Brit. But O'Connor is definitely a very good sort of standard of D-man to bring in, especially for the National League as well. But I think,
Pretty as well, which are
yeah,
flipping hard to come by.
I just think this league in a whole, it just doesn't really complement those sort of offensive D men because it's just sort of you have to be defensive. Like you can't just always be offensive. You know what I mean? If you know what I'm trying to
But I
say.
think he's been able to defend in the elite league though. He ain't having three lines of import forwards. He's going to have the likes of I'll just throw some names out there. He's gonna have the likes of James Smith coming at him, and like, do you know what I mean? Those types. He ain't having like Ben Davies and Sam Duggan coming out and on a fourth line. So I think defensively, he's still going to be one of the top guys, in my opinion.
The
Yeah,
biggest difference is going to be the lack of structure, though. This is the
Yeah,
thing I think people
yeah,
don't.
it's a
The
bit
thing people
erratic in our league.
who don't watch the
Yeah,
elite league on a regular basis. National division hockey is a bit more free flowing, and there is less structure to some teams. Some are better at it than others. Hello, Peterborough, but a lot of our teams, and particularly some of those teams like Telford, like Romford, it's much more kind of chaos, which benefited Coventry in the elite league this year, kind of playing a little bit of everybody does everything. The thing Ben O'Connor will probably be better at is because there's more smaller pads, so no utility arena in
yeah.
Sheffield, no motor point in Nottingham, no I mean Belfast have slightly smaller ice, but it's a lot of smaller pads, which for O'Connor as an older guy,
I think that
legs aren't as
suits
fast as they
men at
once
link
were.
centre.
He'll be able to do a bit better. Slough, Solway, not huge pads, to be able to be much more effective at hopefully being more defensive for the Cats, but also as well, those outlet passes are going to go farther because think about trying to do one of those sort of passes. Think of a Ryan Wells pass at Solway where the neutral zone is like thinner than a Rizzler on a diet. Like O'Connor's going to put the puck like onto the face-off dot in the opposite zone, like on a sixpence. I don't necessarily. I'm not sure I agree with Dan. I don't think. I think we've got too many attacking defensemen in this league and not enough kind of guys to get in the way. I want more Josh Hodgkinsons. I want more Elliot Deweys in the league. I don't think we have enough of them. O'Connor is not that. He is not a defensive defenseman by any stretch of the imagination. But his ability, the hockey IQ and the hockey nous is where he's really going to show people up
Well,
in this division.
we'll move on to. I'll skip forward a few days because I kind of list them. Josh Batch then signed for Bristol. We'll move on to that. Huge signing. Another elite league player coming down. He, Dan, is an example of someone who isn't Ben O'Connor, where you're going to be on the power play. Well, he might be on the power play, who knows? But they still do have, if he signs back Tanner Butler, who I'm sure will maybe slot on the power play. But still, Batch comes in. He's a penalty killer for GB. He covered for Cardiff when they were struggling with defence, and he was that third line shutdown guy. He's someone I think who you're going to see a bit of a different kind of defence first for Bristol because flipping heck, they need that because I think they conceded the most goals last season. Stick him in front of if they sign Napier again or another import netty, whoever, that is going to save so many goals coming in the back of your own net.
Yeah, I really like that signing from Bristol. I think Batch is that typical D man. He's going to get on the ice. He's going to protect the house. He's going to protect the crease. He'll move anyone out in front. He'll just use his body perfectly. He can carry the puck up. He's just that D man. He's just one of those guys that he can just use every part of his game into one part of obviously playing D. And I think having a guy like that is just going to be able to sort of give those other D men that Bristol have got. Obviously, I don't know who they've signed, but they've got a guy to look at for how they need to play. And if they need to throw bodies in front of pucks, like Batch will do that. He'll block shots. He's going to be very, very good for Bristol. I think he's a guy that when you look at O'Connor, you look at Batch. They're obviously two different styles of D men, but Bristol needed a Batch. Bristol didn't need a Ben O'Connor. Like Bristol need a guy like that, and yeah, I think that's very smart moves from Richie Hargreaves.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at Ben O'Connor, as we said, we ain't going to put Ed Bradley with him, are we? You put a Plusy with him, or if we get an import D man, which isn't well, or you can even put imagine Wellesley and O'Connor together as a flipping D. Oh, that's just too disgusting to think about in the National League. But with Batch though, you can then put an offensive guy. Maybe you put Butler and go Butler. Here you go. you got 50 points, and I don't even think we saw the best defensive Butler. I think he spent a lot of time in the bloody penalty box. So whoever they sign, defense wise, they could get an import defenseman like a Brock, who's very offensive, but you've then got that batch to cover. So it's plenty of options there, and I think no team in the league's going to say no to Josh Batch, are they? And I think it obviously helps location wise. I assume Batch will stay in Cardiff, and it's what, a 30-40 minute car drive. Like, it's pretty much at home. And Bristol, they're getting 1,400, 1,500 fans in. I can imagine he's probably, I don't like to assume, we don't really like to on this podcast, but I can imagine he's getting paid well as well to play in Bristol. And it's just a no-brainer signing, I think, for Batch. Anthony.
I think the thing with it is that clearly the time in Cardiff for Josh Batch was coming to an end.
Yeah.
Scratched a lot at the end of the year. Less and less opportunities for it. There was obviously quite a big sort of debate about the fact of, should Josh Batch have been dressed in bits and pieces? And in the playoffs, no. I mean, why they didn't dress him in the final weekend of the regular season was a bit of a strange one. But yeah, like Dan said, we're talking chalk and cheese here. Yeah. Josh Batch had 6 points last year, and on a team that kind of fluctuated in its form as a defensive defenseman, ended up with a -4. That's not terrible, really, for what you want. There's your stay-at-home guy. It'd be nice to have some more stay-at-home guys who are sort of 18, 19, 20 batches. 34, I want to say, quickly pull in think. Yeah, he's 34 years old. So he's still got a bit of life left in him. But clearly, if he wants to stay living in Cardiff, where, from my understanding, is he's now based, he was going to have to do something about that, because if he wasn't going to stay with the Devils, yes, he might have got an elite league gig elsewhere, but it would have been a long way away from home, which of course narrows down your options. And there's again a few teams on the M4 corridor. If the one on you as close to your doorstep as possible over the bridge is asking for you, the Gregs next door to Planet Ice Bristol's never going to argue with a bit more business. And like you said, they desperately needed help on the back end last year. Bristol, they were abject at times at the beginning of the year, and they got better as the year went on, but a lot of it was reliant on their own guys scoring points. And where Hull can kind of get away with Vindaloo hockey, like, we're going to score one more than you, Bristol couldn't get away with that. And so somebody like Batch, who, like you say, if Butler's back, put him with Butler. If they get another attacking minded defenseman, Batch stays back, and you may go free, my child. Go away, go up the ice. I will stay back here and do the grunt work and stand still on the blue line and wave my stick around. Fascinated. Bristol, and everyone's talking about, who's going to go to Basingstoke? I'm fascinated to see what Bristol do, because after 2 years of being in the basement, what do they change, right? Basingstoke have a completely clean slate. Yes, we've got our history and there's a bunch of things to work out there, but Bristol are coming off the back of 2 years of being meh. How do you change from being meh and signing an elite league defenseman to stand on your back end when you've had no back end is probably a good idea.
Well, I think we're not going to go through rumours, but from rumours, it sounds like there is going to be a few changes at Bristol, and excited changes for them, considering there is now 4 main teams, you'd say, in the south, with obviously Basingstoke being added. So a really positive signing for them. And I will say this, I still think he's got the ability to get 20, 30 points in this league. Like, I expect to see a lot of further assists from Batch, of him puck playing it from D to the likes of Harewood, to whoever they're going to sign. Because, well, if Harewood signs back, sorry, because he's not signed, but yeah, I expect him to get a lot of further assists as well. And he's going to be huge for their PK. So those are the 2 Elite League defensemen who have moved down to the Southern teams. On to a defenseman who has left, and they come as a pair. Noah McMullen and Matt Baron, and what pickups from Ryan Aldridge. First of all, not only are they fantastic hockey players who have fit in like a glove at Leeds, they're just nice guys. And I think you see all coaches say, we obviously want to sign the best player we can, but we also look to what they're like as a player, a person, and how they'll fit in the dressing room. And obviously we had Noah on this season on the podcast. Really nice guy. He always makes time to say hello. His dad as well. He was loving it. I do find, actually, when these Canadians come down and play in the national, their families do love the league. I think it's a really nice little fun league to come and watch, and they can come down from Canada to the UK to watch it. But McMullen and Baron are leaving, and I think it's for personal reasons and opportunities back in Canada. Like McMullen was saying how he loved it in Leeds, but obviously being away from family, they get to go home now and wherever they're going to play. But Dan, that is two massive losses for Leeds.
Oh yeah, McMullen. Out of all the like import D men that came in, he was one of the top ones. I really like McMullen.
Yeah,
I like the way he plays.
system.
You look at Wales, and he's like a Wales, but with more sort of defence. He doesn't really bring the puck forward like a Wales. He'll obviously, he's just more of a defensive guy. He's picked up a few points this year though.
Yeah, he
He's
has.
sort of,
It's been on their power play.
yeah, so he's had that opportunity, but yeah, McMullen is going to be a huge loss. Baron was really finding himself this year. I found. I think the first year he was still getting used to the league, but this second year that he had at Leeds, he was outstanding. Like at the start of the season when Brown was obviously out, Baron sort of took charge. He took that opportunity to sort of show what he can do, and he just sort of ran with it. I think the start that Baron had really helped him throughout the year because he just sort of started the year off good. You're feeling good about yourself. You're feeling confident, and he really found a sort of role in that team. He was always the guy in the slot. He was always the guy that everyone looked at for that little tap in play. He was a very clever hockey player, and hockey players like that are hard to sort of replace. So I think Aldridge has got a very hard job this off season, sort of replacing these two guys because they're such big parts of this Leeds team. They're not just like your average import. These are guys that have been a stonewall in this Leeds team now for 2 seasons, and they've really made their mark. So I think I'll be interested to see who Aldridge gets. I'll be interested to see if he goes for sort of the same style of player or if he changes it up now that they're both gone. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what he does.
Yeah, well, they're guaranteed now three new imports. We'll have to see if Matt Bissonnette signs back. If he doesn't, four fresh new imports into the team. 21 power play goals, Matt Barron this season for the Knights. As you said, in that, I'm going to call it the Glenn Billings spot in front of the goal, as Charlie always says. But 21 power play goals. No matter how much you try and mark him in that slot, he always finds that little pocket of space and he will get that stick first to it. As you said, Noah McMullen, I think first season he come in really just knuckled down on that defense. Was that guy to just sweep everything away from Gospel, let him see everything. This year you see it a lot, Anthony. When imports stick around for another season, you kind of see the improvement in specific areas. Now they know that it's a very offensive league. So maybe some of the systematic stuff he would have done back in U Sports, he's been like, okay, there's a bit more space, there's a bit more time. And he got a vast improvement in his points in the second season.
Yeah, the opportunities just end up kind of coming up more. And but where you come from, the expectation for an import is that you will contribute in a bunch of different areas. It's probably what kind of cost Jordan Spatafore a little bit because people were expecting things that weren't necessarily in his game plan. McMullen, on the other hand, had the ability to kind of do all those things. It never felt like he was, like Dan said, not the most natural of kind of guys going forward in those kind of things who sort of picked up points because he kind of picked up points rather than kind of going for it, shall we say. But he could be used in kind of in every situation. He was a really,
coach's
really
dream defenseman, really.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, because he could do a little bit of everything, was solid doing everything, was able to be given kind of any task, and he would do it pretty well. The thing I think though with Leeds is that people will sort of say, they're sort of making all these big changes. Leeds got caught this year and got dragged into it. You got dragged into a 4-horse and a 3-horse and a 2-horse race for the title, and it feels unnatural to do it. But Leeds kind of needed to change the guard. That's not necessarily anything against McMullen or Baron. Baron in particular, like you said, on the power play, deadly. But like you have to freshen things up from time to time, and it's no bad thing. And if you've got the ability of Leeds to kind of go and get different guys in and go, oh, by the way, look at everything that we've won. We are the bar. We set the bar in this division. Yeah. Would you like to come and try and add to that? Was it 7 of 9 trophies in the last 3 seasons? Would you like to go for more? That's a pretty easy selling point. And like you say, Baron and McMullen have been given opportunities back home, whether they're hockey related or non-hockey related. Every hockey player seems to become a firefighter at some point in their life, or a personal trainer in Canada. So all the best to the pair of them for what they do next. But yeah, Leeds got caught, and actually freshening things up is probably not a terrible thing for them. And I can't remember which of you said it last week though, but imports are easier to get at the moment in certain positions, and ultimately you can, if you're Ryan Aldrich and you've got some really, really good British talent, you know what your holes are, you can go and fill those gaps with imports, because there's a lot of them around who might fancy trying to win another title on Ellen Road.
Yeah, the thing I loved about Baron, and when we put the post out about Baron and McMullen about their points, someone commented, I think, oh, they're not at the top of the points, or the Baron got 83 last season, and obviously you've got the likes of your Kieran Browns and your Britnells, Sobchaks, Millers, who got over 100 points. Miller was just under, actually, but Baron's not that guy. He is. I bet he was one of Aldridge's
You're
favourite
supporting
players.
Cars to get 80 points in the division.
Yeah, like Leeds prove you don't need him to get 100 points to win the league. They let the least amount of goals in. He prides himself on that defensive game and tracking back, and then being able to go up the ice and get those big goals. And he had multi-goal games. I think against Romford he scored 4. Like he showed he can do it. And especially with the absence of Brown at the start of the season, he was on a ridiculous goal scoring pace. But when Brown come back, you don't need to score as much. And he focused on the basics of not letting goals go in the back of your net, and the goals will come. And that's what I think. That's what I loved the most about Matt Baron, and I know that's what you loved the most, Dan. And it will be interesting to see who they replace him with, because those players are quite hard to replace. And all 3 imports who they bring in, maybe 4. We don't know, but it might be their first seasons in the national, and it'll take time for them to adjust. So I do agree, Anthony. They're in not a rebuild, but they're in a tiny little restructure, retooling. Retooling, I think, is the right word. For
you
next
mentioned
season.
about Baron. You mentioned about Baron, Jack. Of the top 10 point scorers in the national division, only one of them has a trophy at the end of the season.
Exactly. Let me try and guess. Is that Brown?
It is indeed Kieran Brown.
Yeah. So it just proves you don't need to be the top point scorer to. It's nice to get 100 points, don't get me wrong. I remember that league title Leeds won with Hayward, Shudder and Brown all getting over 100 points, and they smashed the league to pieces. But yeah, I think Baron will be a loss, and I'm interested to see who they bring in. But we've spoken enough about that, and as you said, Anthony, we wish them good luck to whatever career paths they choose, and imports come and go, and we'll try and get McMullen or maybe Baron on the podcast, and they can talk about their time reflection on Leeds in a positive way. One import forward who did get 100 points and has signed back for another year is Mr. Walker Sommer with the Sheffield Steel Dogs. And I think this was one of the guys you're looking at who you can trust, who's going to put the puck in the back of the net. He was the second top point scorer, goal scorer. He probably would have been the top goal scorer if he played that last game against Swindon. But he was rested. Dan, he is probably, I'll say this, he's probably the most deadly player in the league off the rush, isn't he? If he's coming at you on a 2-on-1 or a 1v1, he is scary.
Yeah, he's the shot that he's got is so clever. He's a very clever shooter.
Yeah.
Like he will use the guys in front. He will use whatever's in his way. When you think you're blocking his shot, you're actually just screening it.
He uses your legs, doesn't he?
and it'll just shoot between your legs. He's just a natural goal scorer, I think, and he's a guy that very quickly became a goal scorer in this league. He didn't take a lot of time to get used to it. I think in the first game we went to last season, obviously Leeds versus Sheffield, the first game of pre-season, I'm pretty sure he scored two or three. I think he got a hat trick. I think he
Yeah,
got a
him
hat
and
trick in that
Halfor's
game.
both got a hat trick.
Yeah, and like it was after that game, it was no joke what someone was going to bring to this team. I think now that he's back next year, you've got someone that's had a year in the National League. He knows what to expect. He knows what he can do in this league. I think the big thing for Sheffield now is what guys you get to put with him. Now you've got that foundation of you're going to get goals whatever line he's on. So now you just got to think of what guys can I put on that line to make it that really good two-way line,
Yeah.
maybe that really good offensive line. Um, they've got the best of both really. Like they can put him with another offensive guy, then a more of a two-way guy. So you got those two offensive threats like in two different ways, or they can go for a really good sort of 200-foot line. So you've got the offense on one end, you've got the defense on the other end, and really make it a hard line to play against.
This is my next point. When we talk about Baron and we talk about Walker Sommer, it's two very different players. Walker Sommer's someone who can shoot from just inside the blue line and it will still go in the back of the net, whereas Baron's sweet spot is right in front of the net. All of those crappy goals, he can score a nice goal. We're not saying Baron can't, but Walker Sommer, as for a small guy, has got one of the best shots in the league. And he's not though, Anthony, a guy who you're going to chuck out when you've got a 1 or 2 goal lead and you're trying to defend that lead. He's just not that import. So I agree with Dan in the sense that they played Halfors with him, who maybe lacked that point scoring because he was covering a bit for Walker Sommer. Obviously, it's not just like that, but you do have to get players who complement Walker Sommer because he's a very off the rush, give the puck to him, and he will give you the offense.
I don't think, given the fact that there's quite a large number of Swindon fans who listen to this show, Emil Svek.
Yeah. And
Like
Brixie this season as well.
Who signed Emil Svek to be a two-way player? There's a conversation I had with Hull, with people in Hull, including their manager. I wish he'd do more on the back end. Then why did you sign him? You don't sign guys like that to do that job. And yeah, maybe Halfors kind of suffered a little bit because he was needed to do some of that kind of coverage. But ultimately, there are hockey players off that breed. Greg Chambers in Basingstoke all those years ago, it would barely come back past his own blue line. But as soon as the transition happened,
comes to mind.
Be up to the other end. Yeah, and Hergy would definitely be in that kind of category as well. But you can't argue with the success with Walker Sommer in that respect. Like you say, I'm fascinated to kind of see what they do around him because Sheffield, as you will hear continuously, it's all part of a larger plan. We've got to trust the process. Awesome. 100% happy to let you guys work your process. And it's the start of a much, much longer project of what they're trying to do in Sheffield. That's cool. The problem is that your 5-year plan has to actually do something at the time that is also kind of moving along. And I think that's kind of what people will be interested to see because you've kind of seen Finlay Ulrich be, I suppose technically Sam Tremblay as well, but mostly kind of Finn Ulrich and Ivan Björklund-Nordstrom, those younger British guys getting those opportunities in the elite league. Sommer's there to kind of complement them, give them a model pro to kind of stand alongside kind of job, and they will probably take 10 less points if they get a sort of an exponential development of the British players around him as a result of it. But yeah, if he plays like we know we can, it'll probably be up for another 100 points next year. But then again, for Sheffield, overall output at the end of the year, kind of disappointing. So there's a balance there for the Steel Dogs that they'll sort of say, they'll continuously point towards the bigger picture. I actually think become an AHL style organisation in Britain.
I actually think this extra import slot's going to benefit Sheffield because they'll get a big star, I guess, into that younger team, and they could maybe get an older guy to come in. And maybe that guy's going to complement Walker Sommer. Obviously, Jonathan Phillips, we don't know if he's going to come back. That's another big hole you've got to fill on that second line centre, gathering that Tremblay stays as well, which I'd assume he would do, but you just never know.
Yeah, everybody's just massively suspect about that now off the back of what happened in the CHL and then the end of the season. Like, oh, but he's come back to the Steel Dogs, and everybody's like, he might be coming back to Ice Sheffield because he's got to train somewhere. But yeah, should be a fascinating one.
It is. I mean,
fascinating on that one. But I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what Sheffield do because let's face it, Ulrich's probably gone. Maybe half chance that he goes off to an elite league organisation that maybe not be Sheffield because they'll say, right, if you don't want to stay on this pathway job, come play elite league now. So yeah, there's a bunch of, like I say, the Steel Dogs are now part of a bigger machine of turning cogs.
Yeah.
Their goal is not necessarily to win the national division per se, because
even if Tony Smith will say so that they need to win the national.
Tony Smith also said that British players weren't entertaining at one point. So let's kind of balance all of those bits together in kind of one space that he's probably he's implementing. No, because he said it. It's a quote. It was in the paper that he said that. So it's not even taking it with a pinch of salt. Those were his words. But he's very clearly found a methodology of what he wants to do to make the Sheffield Steelers the literal best organisation they can be. And how the Steel Dogs now have had one full year, one proper whole year of doing it this way.
Yeah.
So what does year 2 bring? Because we'll now see the next turning of the wheel.
Yeah, that's why that's why I hold myself back sometimes in judging straight away, because they have said many times it is a longer process and it's the start of this new process. And I think you reminded me of that, Dan, before I said maybe how this season wasn't quite the season which I thought it would be, but they do have a big signing on Wednesday, Jamie said on Twitter. So I'm interested to see who that is. Is that going to be a new pathway player? Who's going to bounce between the two teams? We will have to see. But
that's Brett Ferguson.
But yeah, Sommer's back for next season. I think it's a solid sign-in. You can trust him. He now knows the league as well. And as we said with McMullen and Baron, sometimes takes a season and you can improve on that the next season. And he loves the big ice pad because flipping heck, the amount of one-on-ones he gets, breaking away, capitalising on the British defence errors. But he will have to come against some better D-men because there is obviously that 4th import slot. Another sign-in and positive. Well, we'll move on to the Bees, who've had a bit of positive news this week. They've extended their two-way or their development system with the Cardiff Canucks. They've now got another development system with the Haringey Huskies. And
Haringey
Huskies. Shout out them, by the way. I love the Jumbotron. That looks sick. I think all teams should. I know it's very in the budget. You've got to push the boat out there financially, but it does look pretty cool. You have to come on, lads. We have to admit that does look pretty cool.
Yeah, but to put one of those in Basingstoke, you'd have to double the height of the building.
That's true. Yeah,
scrape it. You'd literally be. You wouldn't be ice hockey, but you almost like croquet, like trying to play underneath.
No flipping pizzas, eh, Dad?
No, I don't know. I don't think
shout out to Lee
hold a
Mercer.
Jumbotron like that in Basingstoke. You can barely hold what he's got now.
Shout out Lee Mercer at Haringey for getting that over the line. I know he's been wanting to get the owner of the Huskies. He's been wanting to get that done for quite some time and develop. They finally got rid of the netting and got plexi. They finally got this kind of installed, and I know Lee's got this sort of larger plan, potentially even to bring the Huskies up from Div 2 into Div 1 at some stage. So we will see what happens there. But yeah, it looks mint. It looks mint.
Yeah, Jumbotron for National 2. Flipping damn right. But yeah, on to the Bees then. They've got that partnership or pathway, if you want to call it, with Haringey as well. I got my news wrong. So I don't think they are playing out of Haringey. I got baited, I'll be completely honest. But they didn't specify straight away, which led me to my thoughts, but I completely got shut down straight after. But either way, Sennis is back for 2 years. And for a first signing for the Bees, Dan, that is not a bad signing. Now, do I think that's probably the only place he'd probably be able to get a national deal? Maybe. But at the end of the day, he was a massive impact on that team, a bigger impact, to be fair, than I thought he would be. And he's kind of got that arrogant kind of I know I'm a good player, and he brings that to the Bees. And he signed for another 2 years, which is, I guess, positive for the Bees and Bees fans as well. And it's not a bad first signing for them.
Yeah, I think you talk about the arrogance, and I think that's the reason why he did so good in Bees
Yeah,
because
he had a point
they
to prove.
they want that. They need a guy that's going to take that puck and he's going to do what he wants of it. Like they've got guys there that are going to work hard, but they haven't got a guy
Got
that
grinders, yeah.
that can finish it. And obviously, you've got your Dom Gabais, you've got your Marcel Balaz. I know Marcel Balaz sort of turned himself into a finisher now. Um, but
I
so
prefer,
Sennis obviously sat himself on that second line, and he could run that line. He was bringing the offensive threat when they needed it. Scored some really big goals for Bees. He lifted that
penalty
Bees
shots.
team. Oh yeah, penalty shots, breakaways. He lifted that team when he signed. They were sort of in a bit of a rough patch at the time. Obviously, losing Banya, the Bees fans were obviously annoyed about that, which is understandable. But to bring in a guy like Sennis, um, I think he turned those Bees fans right around, and they started obviously getting a bit more upbeat again. And for a club like Bees, having a guy like Sennis is perfect because he brings every part of the game. He'll score you goals. He's a fan pleaser. He'll get the fans involved. He can throw the body. Obviously, we know he's got a history of obviously doing some bad things, but it's
Loves a shush. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
he loves to be that wind up guy, and
He
I
owns
think
it, doesn't he? He
yeah,
owns it.
and he loves it. Like he wouldn't be able to get the opportunity in a bigger club because they just wouldn't let him do that. But Beezy sort of gets a free reign of doing what he wants to do. He can play his
Yeah.
game, and I think that's how you get the best out of Sennis. It was a bit like in Basingstoke with Gale. We just let Gale do what he wanted to do. We didn't sort of keep Gale to a system. We didn't keep him
Wow.
to
Morris is like that as well a bit.
yeah,
So,
but he's a different guy to
yeah,
Sennis.
he is.
He's not going to
He's,
pick up those points like Sennis. He's not going to
yeah.
score those big
Sorry, mate.
goals. Yeah, sorry, mate, but I'm sure you understand. But yeah, I think that's a big sign of the Bees, and obviously getting the 2 years as well. It gives them that bit of security, which is also nice for the Bees fans to hear.
Yeah, it's a player who's not gonna go down the road to the new team in town as well. And yeah, I think it's a nice little starter. I am very interested to see who they sign. I will hold back on the Basingstoke question until we finish the last few signings. Jack Cooper then re-signed. Briefly go over him because we've had him on the podcast. Great guy. He's obviously going to be the captain again for Jason Buckman. Yeah, Jason
Yeah, yeah.
Buckman. I always get his first name wrong, but I did get it right this time. And yeah, he's back. I think we all saw that coming. He wasn't going to go anywhere else, was he? So we're happy for Jack. Sorry, mate, we're not going to touch on you too much because we everyone knows what Jack Cooper is. Jason Huitt, on to another Jason. That's a big re-signing for Hull, Anthony, and I think he was one of them players who he was hot out the gates to start last season. He then went on a patch where he really struggled to get on the score sheet. And Hewitt's someone over the years who's been relied on to score. He was the top goal scorer in the league, I believe, back in I've forgotten what season it was, but he was the top goal scorer in the league. Him and Nell were going blow for blow to try and get that top goal scorer. But last year was a bit of a different year for him because he heavily outweighed his goals with assists. And I think as he's got older, he's kind of had to change his game a bit. And also, he's not, without being too disrespectful, he's not the top dog now at Hull. They've got plenty of players who can stick the puck in the back of the net.
Yeah, and it benefits some guys. It's it's the changing of the changing of the style to suit what you're able to kind of do. Sergei Fedorov, perfect example of a guy who played one way at the beginning of his career and transitioned away from that to do a very, very different job later on. Huey, who will eventually smile one of these days, I'm sure. It's no big. I don't think it's a big surprise that when he struggled, Hull struggled in a lot of ways, because everybody will talk about, you can talk about the firework players for Hull, the Sobchak, the Svek, and things like that. But ultimately, who kind of, if we're honest, who really drives that Hull team from the back? And yes, you can have Sobchak and Svek up front doing all the shiny things. it's Chamberlain, it's Bonner, it's Huitt. Right, there's your backbone, because something could happen tomorrow, and Sobchak will go back to Canada, and Emil will go back to the continent to go to kind of do bits and pieces. So if you don't have those three really firing for you as Hull inside your top six, that's where you're going to struggle. Jason Hewitt as well, massively wily veteran. I'm sure there's probably some Sheffield Steelers fans massively confused when he would score like 10 points in the league season. He's scoring like 50, 60 points down here. But he's a fascinating character to watch even after all these years. And you might not say much about Jack Cooper. Saturday the 3rd is his testimonial. Go.
Sorry. Sorry, Jack. I did know he had his testimonial coming up. Okay,
it's a Saturday.
Oh,
sorry, kids.
Sorry,
sorry, kids. You can't go to the after party because it's in Yates in Romford, which is probably the best place to kind of do an after party. Because if you say, "Where are we doing this?" in Romford, Yates. Yep, got ya.
Well, just like we said to everyone when we interviewed James Griffin last week, then if you are around the Romford area, you get another week of hockey, and I believe they've got a lot of old players coming back. Glenn Billings playing in it as well, obviously the Romford lad. So yeah, a lot of players playing that. Do go watch that. Sorry, Jack Cooper. And just said, Huitt's 41, Dan. Oh my goodness, he's going to be 42 at the start of next season. Fair plays. I'll be honest, in my head I had him still at like 38 years old. He's going to be 42 next season. So forgive me. That is definitely a reason why your points are going to go down. Because physically you ain't going to be able to play that 25 minutes to 30 minutes a night. But yeah, it's just wow. Yeah, fair enough. 42 years old, Dan. Flipping heck.
Yeah, the thing with Hewitt though is his mouth ain't going to slow down. He's still going to be chirping.
Oh, mate, he is.
even if he can't, even if he's a bit slow on the skates, he can still talk. And
the whole way.
Yeah, he's still going to bring that whole game to it. And yeah, he's a guy that's been around for ages. I'll never forget when he did that little hip check sort of cheap shot on Derek Rao when he sent him flying in his debut, did like a front flip. He's just as sort of the guy that Hewitt is. He plays that chippy game. He can wind players up. He can get the anger out of players, and he's a perfect guy for Hull. He loves Hull. He's obviously got his gold gif. Obviously, this is his city. He loves it. And yeah, he sort of obviously talk about the age. He was either going to be retiring or he was going to be re-signing at Hull. You couldn't really imagine him going anywhere else.
Yeah. He wouldn't have gone anywhere else.
Like Anthony said, he's a guy that everyone's going to look at. He's a guy that can sort of boost that team, and I think he was definitely a big re-signing to get.
Yeah.
Also, 42 is nothing. Where's Steve Morrier retired at 51? Keep going, Huey.
What was Tony Ann? 48?
Yeah, 47, 48.
That's mental, isn't
it? And he not him joking, he could have gone on for another couple of years. Like he would get assists for fun. The final two signings then, before I finally ask a few questions about Basingstoke, because I know you've got to run off soon, Anthony. Tom's Rutkiss and Grinnell Park, both probably two of the quickest players in the league. They are back. I believe they're on 2-year deals as well, which is really good for Milton Keynes. Rutkiss got Coaches Player of the Year, so he's obviously Tim Wallace loves him. I can see why. He works his ass off every single game, and he also chips in with big goals as well. And he didn't stand out massively at the Cov weekend, but he just wears the opponents down. He will chase every dump. Like, he will evade icings. I love Tom's Rutkiss, and then Grinnell Park as well. Just one of the best penalty killers. He does not mind throwing the body. Again, a bit like they're quite similar actually in terms of they'll chip in with those goals now and again, and they're a player that coaches will love playing, will love playing for them. So those two are back for Milton Keynes to start their rosters for next season. So I believe that is all the signings covered for next season. On to the Bison, and Anthony, I know you haven't officially signed anyone, and the coach hasn't even officially been signed, but what are you, for example, let's just say Basingstoke are back. You've got the rink sorted. The fans are slowly coming through the doors. You're managing to build rebuild that fan base again. A lot of the old faces are coming back. What are kind of your expectations as a Basingstoke fan? What kind of year is this going to be for you, and what do you kind of want from the team without even knowing what the roster's going to be yet?
What is this year?
It's a tough question. It's quite a broad question.
This year is a mulligan. Get it working, get it on the ice, get the wheels turning again. That's kind of all that really needs to happen. Yes, we'd like a competitive team. I think everybody wants that. But I think this is about bringing something back, right? So you have to kind of mirror that with kind of expectations. And as we kind of become part of this kind of wider NEL empire, such as it is, I think that, there'll be a bunch of kind of questions kind of surrounding how that's going to work out. The one thing that probably Swindon and Leeds have been very good at is kind of not nicking players off of each other, so that we kind of know there is a group here that is kind of off limits, and we kind of know what we need to work on from there.
They're not bouncing around everywhere.
No. And, well, what do we want? We want boards at a straight angle. We want flat ice, and we want 20-something guys who are going to put on a jersey and care, right? Because after with all, in the midst of a rink that was, dilapidated, was kind to it, right? That last roster, for as hodgepodge as it was, cared. They knew something wasn't right, and they put, and then, that last weekend in the playoffs kind of, it was what it was. But there was the last game in Basingstoke, so the second leg. So after we're well out of it because we got walloped in the first leg, and there was a moment where that young Leeds team didn't know what to do, because it was just everybody in a Bison shirt firing at them from all angles, running around, and they almost didn't know what to do in the occasion. Now Leeds were Leeds, right? The veterans wound their necks back in, and they ended up winning the game.
Dan, sorry to butt in. Dan always says to us he will never forgive Leeds on that second game. He said that Leeds should have just given us the flipping win on our last game.
Absolutely not. Out on our shields. I'd much rather that we went out and played a competitive game of hockey, which is what we did. Our last game was being put out of the playoffs. They played their hearts out, and they didn't have enough. And the best team in the country at our level beat us and put us out and put us down. That's how it should have gone. We shouldn't have gone. We didn't go out with a whimper. We went out with a bang. We got our goal. Norcliffe scores the early goal, and that's fine. We weren't getting shut out in the last game before everything happened. But that roster cared. George Norcliffe, Alex Sanford before he had to go off as well. Alex Metham. The ridiculous amount of effort, energy, and just sheer bloody mindedness that Alex Metham put in during his 5 years in a Bison jersey was absolutely mad. So this team has one job. Whoever we sign from anywhere, if you put the shirt on, give a damn. That is all I will ask of anybody this year, because this is about building back now, right? We don't need a trophy this year. Would be nice. We don't even in some ways need to make Coventry, though it would be nice. Put the shirt on, care. Make everybody believe again. That's all that this year has to be. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It doesn't have to be magical. It just has to be giving a toss.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is. And beat the bees. That's all we can do.
That rivalry is going to be back again. It will be interesting to see maybe if there is any bees players who do come back. That will be a talking point, I guess. But I'll come back to you in a sec, Anthony, maybe with one last question before we have to go. But Dan, what are you looking forward to most? Because obviously me and you spoke on the podcast last week about Basingstoke, and you give your thoughts and excitement. But what are you looking forward to the most getting your team back?
Yeah, obviously it'll be nice watching Bison again. It'll be nice watching them up and down the country, having a team to support again, which is always nice. But like Anthony said, I want to see a team that is going to build into something for the future. I want to see that core really come through again. Obviously, Bison is going to be hard. Obviously, 2 years out is a long stint. Guys move on. Guys that you thought were going to re-sign have moved on to different clubs. They've made new lives. They're not going to sort of come back to Basingstoke. So you want the guys that join, like Anthony said, I'm just sort of echoing what he said. You want these guys to put in the effort, and you really want them to play for that Bison jersey that's on their front. Because in the future, obviously, Bison are going to need those guys. Like, you're going to need those guys that really drive that team. And every team needs it. They need that core group of people that are going to be there. They know what the club's about. They're the ones that drive the club. It's the ones that you sign, those imports, those sort of big Brits. They're the ones that can get you the wins. But these are the players that everyone looks at because you are the core of that team. So I'm excited for that, and I'm just excited to see what sort of youth can come through again. We need to get that youth system going again. Obviously, there's a lot of young guys coming up in the National League, you're National 1, National 2. You've got guys coming up. I would like to see what youngsters can come through. This is an exciting opportunity. This is a new opportunity for players. This is sort of a place that's had 2 years out. They've come back, and they've sort of got a chance now to really show what they're about. They've sort of not got any pressure on them because Basingstoke,
There's not too much pressure, I'd say.
like me and Anthony are going to be. We're not expecting Bison this season to light the world alight. This is a perfect time for players. We saw it on the last season of Basingstoke. Eddie Landsbergs, he came into Bison. He had an opportunity and he took it with both hands, and look what he did. Like, this is a perfect opportunity for a young guy to come into this team and really show what he's about and really make himself a main guy in that team. Because the pressure there is none. Like, all we want is for you to perform, and yeah, just try, and that's all we want from you. So if you can take that with anything that you need, and just sort of get on that ice and really show what you can do, then go ahead and you could be a really good top core guy for Bison in the future.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Anthony, obviously, it was announced that obviously Steve Nell and Rob Furman will be coming in. And first of all, I completely get some fans. Obviously, they're owning 3 teams, and you don't really see that in many sports. Normally, it's just one owner on a team.
Or
But
any sport,
any
apart from
sport,
British
yeah.
ice hockey.
But obviously, I actually, having worked with the Wildcats and stuff like that, and we've seen what Steve has managed to do with Leeds and how successful they've been. And I'm not saying Basingstoke are going to come in and do what Leeds have done. That would be very nice.
Oh,
I'm sure you two would love
Would be
that.
very nice.
But how excited are you to hopefully get your stability within Basingstoke? And you've seen how successful Swindon and Leeds are season on, season out in keeping that core group of guys. And I was going to mention earlier, obviously with Haringey getting that jumbotron, you got Leeds with their big screen. Swindon have now got their big screen. I have nothing but high hopes for the future of Bison, and not just the team, but also just getting that Bison community back as well. And I think you're in quite safe hands with that.
Like I said at the beginning, cautious optimism is how I operate. And like Dan and I have been around this a while. We remember the bad owners. We remember the years in the Elite League where we had 2 bad owners back to back in the space of 12 months and nearly went under before Planet Ice stepped in. We remember the end of the 2008-2009 season where we lost 27 consecutive games because Planet Ice had to step in and because an individual took the money and ran away. So it's not a case of that we don't see what Steve Nell has done elsewhere and immediately go, oh, like he's not going to do that for us. Like, Steve Nell has built a sustainable business. You think about what happened with Swindon, right? The Link Centre gets shut because of the flooding, and everybody goes, what's going to happen here? Well, the league rallied around Swindon, helped them out, did bits and pieces, and Leeds carried on regardless, right? There's no big issue there. But the difference here is that Leeds came with no history, and we come with a large amount of history. We come with baggage as an organisation that Steve is picking up here. And it's not that we don't believe what Steve will say. And of course, 6th of May, Apollo Hotel, we're going to find out some of those bigger plans face to face. But we come with the caveat of we've seen this happen before. And it's not that we don't disbelieve Steve. It's we need to call our own form book, and we need to be cautious about what happens, because, and I've written about this on my site as well. Like, And ultimately, the thing I said at the end of that was try to be fair. Right, I come with biases, I come with prejudices, I come with the knowledge that I come from and the history that I have. And the history that I have is the last person outside of planet Ice changed his name and set up a company to protect like ships from Somali pirates in the seas off of Africa and disappeared off the face of the earth. So we want to know, we need to see things a little bit. And yes, we're going to be doubting Thomas's for a little bit because we want to see stuff, but also as well, we come from the whole last couple of years of this massive rigmarole with Standard Securities and Planet Ice and Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. The rink isn't done. And I can't think that Dan and I will have had similar thoughts over the last couple of years. Like, the rink's going to be finished at the end of the summer. Is it? Is it really? Because we remember what that was like. We were there every week. We got immunity to the various versions of botulism because of all the green stuff on the walls, right? So Steve, just like Tony Smith, irrespective of his words, deserves the opportunity at Sheffield to make things in his image. Steve Nell and Rob Furman have agreed to take on the Basingstoke Bison. They deserve the opportunity to fly or fall by their own methodology. So I would encourage people listening that are Bison fans and that are other fans as well. Yeah, it's not ideal to have one entity owning 3 teams. It isn't at all. But British hockey has managed to find a way to square that circle in its own head, irrespective of that. They deserve the opportunity to implement what they're trying to do, to bring in the staff that they want to bring in the players they want to bring in, and have a go at it, because that's the way the chips have fallen for us right now. The thing I would say is that if they do right, we should praise it. If it doesn't work, we should constructively go back to them and tell them why it doesn't work, rather than mouthing off at them. Because ultimately,
that's
irrespective,
not
it has in some. I think it probably has in more places than we would probably care to say it. But ultimately, there's one thing Steve now doesn't know how to do, and it's run a hockey club. It's run 2 hockey clubs. In fact, at the same time. So he deserves, like I say, him and Rob deserve the opportunity. They have agreed to step in and do this. They deserve the opportunity to do so if they're the ones putting their hands into their pockets and letting the words come out of their mouths. I'm interested and excited to see what happens. As is always the way, from a banners on the wall perspective, I've spent a really long time holding Planet Ice's feet to the fire when they've said, or whether it's England ice hockey or whoever. I'll call it as I see it. That goes the same for them as well, but I will absolutely give them the opportunity to succeed. I want them to succeed. I want the Basingstoke Bison to be back at that point it was in April of 2018. We were the best club in Britain, not an elite league team in April of 2018. I want us to get back there. If Steve Nell is the man, if Steve Nell and Rob Furman are the men to lead us back there, it all begins in a few months' time. And I'm massively looking forward to seeing what comes of it.
And what I will say is, they might have the same owners off the ice, but flipping heck, the Basingstoke Swindon rivalry is still going to be a humdinger.
Boxing Day!
Yes.
We get Boxing Day back again.
Yeah, and Anthony, before you go, should I let Dan stand with me, my dad, and Charlie now that he is going to be on the other side when Swindon play Basingstoke?
Someone's got to class up the joint. That's the thing. That's what Dan's going to be back to do. Someone's got to remind Charlie that Thomas Karpov is the best import in the history of the EPL. Someone's got to remind Charlie of the Sean Thompson goal in 2016 in that game in Swindon on our way to winning the EPL, and someone's got to remind him of the Karpov backhand goal past Stevie Lyle on the 13th of March 2016 when the Basingstoke Bison won the English Premier Ice Hockey League. We've got to remind, Dan's got to be there to remind people of all those little bits, if nothing else. And if nothing else, he's bigger than a lot of you, so he just stands behind you and then just blocks everybody else from getting too close.
I don't get in the way. I'm just there, and then I just break up any fights.
I'm sorry, before you do go, thank you for hopping on with us tonight. I know we've probably kept you a bit longer. It's gone on a bit longer than I thought it would. We started late, so it's no big issue. But yeah, congrats, fellas, on the season that you've had, obviously, and folks have come in and done bits and pieces. And I said to Dan that that the last couple of years, of course, without the Bison being around, I think Dan and I were kind of some people didn't come back to the sport, some people kind of left it because Basingstoke was their thing. But I think Dan and I have massively benefited in some ways from it because we walked out into the world and tried to do something with ourselves and with our time. Like I said, Dan is an honorary Mac. Obviously, he's not been fully adopted as of yet. Deed poll has not come into
he's not become Macca Connors or anything like that. But yeah, like well done on the season you've had, lads, in terms of what you've been able to create. Bring it on, I suppose. That's all we've got to say. You know, the summer's going to bring some changes. We will all see where the cards fall come the back end of August, beginning of September.
I know us three will definitely be back for the Basingstoke Bison preview episode.
Oh.
Dan's not been able to do one of those yet, so we'll have you back on once you've managed to sign. Hopefully sign up your roster.
Anyone at all.
Me. I'm the first signing.
You've got to get your coach first as well, which has been
fifth line Dan Connors.
But I bet one of the things I bet you're excited for is just to get back into that routine of going to the rink at whatever 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, getting your standing corner in that bottom corner. It's just those little things. I bet you've missed so much over the years. I know you've stood on the corner with us, Dan, but even just getting your seat back with your family. So I'm happy for everyone at Basingstoke, and I'm looking forward, as you said, to that Boxing Day game. You can't beat a Boxing Day game down in Swindon or Basingstoke. Right.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, go on.
And you can't beat the stuffing sandwiches that you get in Swindon either.
Yes, I will take my leave of you, gentlemen. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com is where you will find all the bits of writing. Hockey stories, because I haven't had the opportunity where I've been commentating and doing all these bits and pieces. Coming in it's probably going to take me about at least probably like 2 to 3 weeks, possibly a month, but coming soon. A man who was a fighter ace and a hockey player and a refugee and an aristocrat and all things in between. Just you wait for that one. True story of a fascinating human coming your way in the next couple of weeks from Banners on the Wall. Take care, fellas.
Nice one. Thank you for joining us. Dan, it is nearly 10 o'clock and we've still got to go through every single team. I'm looking forward to this little bit because we can obviously reflect on last season. And we can now go through the teams, obviously with that extra import slot, what we think they should maybe do going into next season. And we'll start with Basingstoke because they are the new team. And we did just talk about it, but I think the general consensus is just getting whatever is it 21, is it? Or 22 players on that roster who are going to go out and play for the badge on the front of the shirt. And if you can get a squad together, I know on your last season you made the playoffs, you can get a squad to make the playoffs. Happy flipping days, but you just want a team of players to go out there and is going to put on a show for the fans and just put their all into these shifts.
Yeah, it's obviously the last season of Basingstoke is very different to what the league is now. It's crazy how being out for 2 years is sort of the league has changed. It's got a hell of a lot more competitive. Like that team of the last Basingstoke team now, it wouldn't have stood a chance. I'll put it out there straight. I don't think it would have stood a chance in this league. I think obviously you've got the likes of import D-men are more sort of in the league now. They weren't back then. And I just think as a whole, obviously the Brits, they're 2 years older. They've obviously grown. They've grown a lot more in the game. So yeah, I just think that team would struggle. But it brings me to obviously this season coming. It's exciting because people talk about the player pool, but the player pool that was there before, all these players are now 2 years older. So you've still got those players around. It's just as a matter as if you can bring them in.
Yeah.
You've obviously got a close elite league team that I think Basingstoke should be looking at. You've obviously got the likes of Guildford. Yeah. You've got a few rumours flying around of Guildford, which I totally get. I think that's a smart move. We've seen guys drop down from the elite league. You've seen the likes of Venus. You've seen the likes of Ferrara.
It's more common now, isn't it?
Yeah, and you look at Guildford. Obviously, Guildford and Basingstoke had their rivalries in the past. But there's guys in that team that I think could be looking for a new sort of a new sort of chapter of their hockey career. It's it's an interesting one because sort of they can come into that team and they can sort of do anything they would like to do. If they would like to come in and sort of go into a coaching career, there's a coaching spot there. If they want to carry on playing and sort of go into their coaching career, there's a player coaching spot there. Or if you want to come in and just be a good guy in this league, but sort of not be so invested into hockey, you've got a bit of an easier schedule. You can sort of play lesser games. It's a bit less physical on the body, stuff like that. You can come to Basingstoke and you can just be a guy like that. It's you've
Part of the
got
new little project.
yeah, you've got a whole range of different positions in this team that if you want it, and I'm sure no one's going to say no to you if you came and sort of said anything. But it's exciting. I'm interested to see how the team can go. Um, Obviously, we were speaking about it earlier with the Bees. You've got a few guys in there that obviously were Basingstoke boys, Bison players, sort of moving away from Basingstoke just to find a team. It'll be interesting to see which ones of those come back. I totally get it if obviously they didn't. Obviously, Bees, you've got a team there that they've played at now. They've sort of got comfortable in that team. Obviously, players have found their roles in that team. They might not want to leave and sort of chance not having that role again. So it's understandable. But at the end of the day, Basingstoke has still got that Basingstoke Bison name, and people are going to move there for the name. So it will be interesting to see who comes in.
Yeah, and it's you've got four imports to fill. We were speaking. The safe option might be obviously Brit goalies are hard to come by. Maybe you go down an import goalie route in your first season. Bristol and Bees did it last season. But I think the consensus is you need somewhat defense, don't you? So definitely an import D, maybe two of them. And then yeah, who knows? Who knows if it's a player coach, if it's a bench coach, we'll have to see with Basingstoke. Because yeah, they've got 20 bloody spaces to fill in the roster and a coach. So yeah, that is Basingstoke. On to Bristol then. And a really tough year for Bristol. They've been in this kind of project for the last 3 years, and they had a really exciting team to start. A lot of those players moved on, and it's been quite a tough last couple of years where I think they've underperformed what they probably could, but then they've also not quite had the roster which I think across the whole season, which has been competitive enough to try and challenge for a playoff spot. We talked about Josh Batch. I think Dan defense and is a must, isn't it? Let's not call a spade a spade. They have to improve their D this season. And I think whether it's Tanner Butler, you have to get that import D. You've now got the coverage of Josh Batch. But then equally, obviously it's hard to judge because we don't know if Harewood's going to come back, if they're going to sign some of these forwards. Smetham's on a 3 year, so that's a really nice player to have in your team. But they have to get these top end imports. There's been rumors there might be a big boy coming very soon, announced very soon, but they have to get some offense flying in, but also working on that back end to protect whoever their goalie's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about Bristol this time last season, and we were saying how they've had a tough few years. They need to really build a core.
Yeah,
And I think this season they've done that. They've brought in guys. You've got like Smetham, you've got the likes of Ewan Hill, you've got the likes of Hamill. You've just got those guys that sort of,
I'd say.
and Morris, Elliot Lewis. That's sort of a good core group that you've got. And I think this season now, that core needs some firepower added
They
into
need
it.
to take a step up as well.
Yeah, they do need to take a step up. I think the fans. We talk about the Bristol fans. Obviously, they've been unbelievable for Bristol. Like they've supported that team through everything, and you can't fault that fan base enough. But I think it gets to a time where these fans do need a bit of paying back. I don't know how long it can be before they start getting obviously quite annoyed with what performances coming on the ice. Um, I think that Bristol had moments last year. they beat Peterborough. Like they beat Peterborough like 10-2. Like they have moments, that team, where they can show brilliance, and they just need to this season. They just need to be a bit more consistent. They need to bring
Yeah.
a bit more consistency in, a bit more firepower in there. You can't just keep relying on Harewood. Like you can you can take Harewood out of game. It is hard, but when you're only going through one guy, it is easy to take it out of the game. So you need to bring a bit more firepower, a bit more sort of differences in their offense. But like we've said, the main factor is the D. If you can keep the puck out of the net, you're going to give yourself every chance to win the game. You don't need these superstars if you can keep the score down to about four, below four. If you can just keep the scores like that every night or most nights, you're always going to give yourself a chance to score goals.
Yeah. I think a two import forwards like they had last year and a D. Oh no, they only had one, didn't they? So I think getting that extra import will be very beneficial for them. To just help Harewood if he does re-sign. And then getting that defenseman, I think that's a must for every team. And then the netminder, if you do re-sign an import goalie, you've obviously got Harry Thomas if he re-signs, which is exciting. And an import net will just help him as well alongside him. So that's the Bristol Pitbulls. We will go through these quicker actually because it is running a bit late. The Bees. I actually think defensively they had the second best penalty kill in the league, which was very good considering they finished outside the playoffs. Um, it's tough because they ain't the biggest budget team. We know that. But I think we don't know if they'll keep Max Wright. I think this is the debate of the brick goalies. When you're a team at the bottom, it's so hard not to get an import goalie, Dan, because you no disrespect to these younger brick goalies, if you throw in a Harry Thomas or like a Tyler Dillabadouche, who's just signed for. Sorry, I just pronounced that terribly. He's just signed for the Canucks, but you can't throw them in this league. You just can't. They they're gonna get no disrespect. They're gonna concede a lot of goals because they're not used to being that starter. So they have they have to get an important Hetty down. They have to.
Yeah, I do agree. When you talk about bees, they're sort of the opposite as what we just said about Bristol. They're fine with a defensive style. They just throw everything back. Like they've got a
Especially on home
style.
ice. Home ice, I
Yeah,
think.
they've got a style where they just bring that neutral zone trap in. Every player gets behind the puck, and they just sort of put everything behind their D. And obviously, when you got a guy like Max right behind you, you're going to feel confident he can save pucks, he can win you games, which we've seen many times. Obviously, the season just gone. Um, but they just need a bit more going forward. I spoke about it earlier. You've got
Well,
these gritty guys, these grinding guys, but you need some more guys with that finishing touch, sort of that can bring the puck and just sort of get you those goals at clutch moments.
yeah, I think maybe a younger import. I'm not sure if they'll re-sign Balaz, but they need a little bit of speedy import who's going to drive the play. You look at Sean Miller, you look at Jake Bricknell, like a bit of a younger guy who's in their prime kind of thing. To go alongside
They
maybe
they
a Gabai or Balaz, and
they
then
need
I think they still have to go with an import D because of how
yeah,
much
yeah.
the you need defense to just match this import quality of forwards coming up.
Yeah, they need a Brendan Welcome. They need a guy like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like that's the guy that they need. And if they do, obviously, like we said, they're a low budget team.
Milan
If they can,
Kostela.
yeah.
Oh, throwback.
If they can keep Balaz, he can still do a job in that team. Like he's not
Yeah,
going
of
to give you
course,
that
of
offense,
course.
but he's going to give you that 200-foot game. So if you can get a obviously with the extra import slot, if you can get a guy like Welcome, like a Miller, like you said, like a Miller, a Schufelt, a Welcome, a Bricknell, someone who can give that offensive threat, you've got a Balaz there that can give you that 200-foot game. He's good off the draw. He's good on the board battles. He can penalty kill. He's a guy like that. So he's still got a spot in that team, but obviously it all depends on what imports you sign and what Brits you can get as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They've only announced one player so far, so we'll have to
Yeah,
see who they sign. Obviously, the Brits is the core. They're the guys you really need to get. They're the core of the team, and then the imports are the guys which are going to get you your points. Solway back to back playoff missing out on the playoffs. They were a bit closer this season. For me, they need to again get that import D, whether that's Arsenal or not. They need a little bit of protection, and I think they need a little bit more going forward, Dan. They didn't get helped with injuries last year. Alderson again got a few niggles here and there, and I think he's so key to it. But yeah, I think that it's so hard because I don't think they're a bad team at all. They just haven't quite got enough to get that playoff spot, and I think they just need a few little adjustments on the back end to just stop those goals going. Because they actually got leads, but just couldn't hold on to them. They'll score 5 or 6 goals, and then they'll lose 6-5 or 7-6. So I think it's just tightening it up on the back end. Maybe you can get a big Scott. Maybe they can get a northern player to come in and who just giving that extra little bit of goal scoring.
Yeah, they do need that, and I think they sort of got caught out a little bit as well last year. Obviously, you're looking at the same guys for that offense. To be fair, at the end of the year, they did get a bit of depth scoring
Yeah.
going.
Oh yeah.
Guys did pop up, and I
Boyd,
think that's a positive. You've got guys like that
Young.
they're going to be coming in. Obviously, they're Scottish lads. They're most obviously not going to assume, but most likely they're going to be back in the team. I said they're core guys again. Um, so they're going to be coming to the season obviously quite confident with how their season ended, and yeah, like you said, they're very close to being that playoff
They're
contention.
so close, so
Like they
so
are just
close.
a few movements away, from being very like for being in there, and they just need to. Yeah, I think this extra import slot is going to help them massively, because you can really sort of revamp a lineup with that. Obviously, they've got their goaltender, which is big. They've got a brick goalie. That is important with these 4 imports, because that means you've got 4 import skaters, which is obviously an advantage. It'll be interesting to see if Gardner comes
That's true,
back.
actually. Yeah.
He's obviously been a big guy. He's been one of those guys that Solway I've looked at. So it'll be interesting if they can keep him, or if they sort of move on and sort of go for a fresh batch of imports. But yeah, they don't need to move much. They
No,
just need to add a few spots in
it's
there.
not been a car crash. It's not like, oh, we need to change loads.
Yeah,
No. And I actually think this import slot will benefit them because they should just, as you said, they've got Mar in goal. And that's massive because it's not using up an import slot on a goalie, which means you get an extra import forward. Unless they go to import D, but I don't think they will because you've got Stenton and
yeah,
BT, who are a year older as well. They're getting even better. They're going to improve year on year. So an extra import forward for Solway. Dunbar Gardiner, we're not sure if they'll re-sign, but either way, you're adding another firepower to that team, which can hopefully get them over the line of playoffs. Telford Tigers, they had the firepower last season. It was the defense, and they never really replaced Hazeldine. Now, Mitchell King, by the way, flipping heck, he got all the awards at the ceremony, and rightly so. He was fantastic. He just needed a little bit of help, Dan, and hopefully this import slot. We're not sure if Brad Day will sign. If Brad Day does, a bit like Solway, you get that import defenseman this time on top of those 3 import forwards. Then
yeah, yeah. It's the D is definitely a focus point for Telford.
you've got
They,
Noah Carrion, who's coming in. By the way, they were
yeah,
unlucky actually that he got injured. Because I actually think he would have helped them a bit this season. He's very talented, so I'm really excited to watch him if he stays with Telford. But
yeah.
I still think Mitchell King needs help. He needs someone to take a bit of the load off as well.
Yeah, I mean they also had a Ross Connolly.
Yeah,
He's sort of he's
he's
one of
been
those big
so
guys.
unlucky with injuries, by the way.
He's a big sort of defensive D man that could have helped as well, and they never really got a chance to replace them. Obviously Brad Day, when he's protected, we know what he can
Yeah,
do. Like
needs protection, man. He need. Don't get me wrong.
every goalie does.
He didn't have his greatest season. But when you're not confident in front of the defense, sorry, with the defense in front of you, and they're not quite playing their best, and You've got loads of injuries. Like this is why I can't critique them that much. You had Adam Harding and Newell having to cover in defence. The lack of British defence in this league, we go on about it, but Telford were the team who lacked it the most, I think, with injuries, and it didn't help them. And I just think that import D man is, if they go with it, it's going to help them so much.
Yeah, I think they should go with it, and I wouldn't be surprised if Telford go with the 2D, two forwards,
Maybe, yeah.
um, because bring Adam Harden in if he resigns. Bring Adam Harden into that forward group.
Back
You've
from
obviously
from D, yeah.
yeah, so bring him into the forwards. He's a guy that can sit on your top six. Um, you've obviously got two imports. You've got Henderson and Thompson. They had good years. I don't know if they're going to stick
Yeah,
around,
but
but
either way, it's two. Tom Watkins, he's pretty good at signing those import forwards, isn't he?
yeah, I mean, one thing he's good at is signing imports halfway through the year.
Yeah,
He always seems to be spot on with them. Um, but yeah, if they can keep guys like that around, then I think focus on the D, protect Brad Day, and I think Telford will be okay because they can play at home. They can make that home rink a fortress sometimes. So I think that can get them through. They just need to be a bit more balanced with how they sort
yeah,
of go about their games.
yeah, absolutely. I actually do like a lot of their Brits. We mentioned him, Tom
Yeah,
Byrne.
they've got some
Tom
good
Burns coming
Brits.
up. He's getting better year on year. Romford Raiders then a bit of a change, obviously with Jason Buckman coming in. They smashed the imports last year to
Oh
pieces.
yeah,
That is pretty much no disrespect, but that got them through the season to where they are, and that's why you sign them. That is why you sign them. But again, I think with the level going up, they need a little bit of help on the back end. And questions do need to be asked of the netminders, the netminding department, because James has been injured quite a bit now. You can't rely on Owen Ryder to be the starter for the whole year. Are they one of the teams who goes down the import netty route? Do you put the trust in Owen Ryder, who's still so young? And I think that would be a massive positive if he can be the guy, because I actually don't. I think he's a good little netminder, and you stick with Ryder and Ethan James, and they share the net, and Ryder gets another year in the national, and then you get the import D, because you don't want to take away from those import forwards. So it's a tough one. Buckman's got a decision to make, doesn't he, Dan?
yeah. I think if I'm Romford, I'm looking at sticking with Ryder. I think
And
that's what
having
I would go
James as
for.
well, possibly.
Yeah, have that little tandem going. Give Ryder more of
Make
the
them
minutes.
battle it out. Let's a bit like with Toronto this season with Wall. I know we're going quite up a few leagues here,
That's
but
good.
Wall and Stolars, they had to battle it out this season, didn't they?
Yeah, I think give Ryder more of the net. I think he's a young goalie. He's going to be coming up. He has got a point to prove, and I think he can fill that net. Um, and then I
Goalie
think
as
go
well.
with go with two import D.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I would say protect Ryder, protect your goalie.
I think you do
Um,
need an offensive D man though. If you're going to go two, you need one real offensive D man, and maybe one defensive one shut
I
down.
mean, we're forgetting Romford. They signed two D men, but they never came through.
Yeah,
Remember a few years ago they signed two import D men and they never they fell through.
they were
Um,
separate though. They didn't sign two at the same time.
no, 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 no. But I would I would go for two import D, two import forwards. Again, I like Romford's Brits. They've
Yeah,
got a good core Brit. They've got a
some
good
young
few
guys as
core
well.
Brits coming in. They've obviously got TJ. You've got Jake that's been there. You've got
Elif.
Alif. Yeah, you've got. I mean, if the Moore brothers carry on that
Yeah,
connection with them, they're two good guys that are coming up through the system.
it's
They're some
exciting.
guys that'll be.
I do think this Romford project is so exciting,
Yeah,
and especially with this new coaching, you trust that Buckman now is probably going to be in charge. He's not here for one season, is he? He's in charge now to just over a few seasons.
yeah. But yeah, I think the main focus point for them is going to be the D because we've spoken about it so many times this season on the pod how they're just all firing forward, forward, forward. They sort of need to change their style a little bit. I think bring this new coach in, maybe change the style a little bit so you are more sort of defensive. You're not going straight in for goals all the time. You've got be a bit more passive, sort of get those goals, and then you can sort of defend a
especially
little bit, get other
especially
goals
away
and
from
defend a
home.
little bit. Yeah,
I think at home with the likes of Hull and Romford, you can play a bit back and forth because you've got that crowd behind you, but especially away from home, I think you're right. They do need to knuckle down a little bit on just playing a bit more simpler and playing the right way kind of thing. Don't force anything. But yeah, I definitely think import D man is a must, maybe two. And I'd like to see Ryder. I know there's a lot of talk about import netties. You could go with one if you get a really, really good one who's going to steal your games, but you never know. You never know. We'll have to see with Romford. I think they're exciting. But we will move on. Sheffield Steel Dogs. Again, real. You just I, with Sheffield, right? It's this system which is going to be spread over a few seasons. And I said I think this extra import will help, and I do think it will. I actually think they should probably go with an older import, a veteran import, Dan. You're talking in their 30s, maybe early 30s, who's going to help these young guys. By the way, while we're saying all of these, what we think, we're not claiming we're bloody experts. We're just saying on the base of last season what we may go with as fans from a fan point of view. We coaches may go, what the bloody hell are these two muppets talking about? But yeah, Sheffield, Dan, I think they should go with an import defenseman this
yeah,
year, and I'm not sure if Halfors will come back. Tremblay and Walker Sommer are signed back, but maybe if Phillips does move on again, we don't know. Get that veteran import to come in and be a comfort blanket alongside those youngsters trying to push through the system.
yeah. I agree. Um, definitely a D man. I would say
Especially with Kirk getting a bit older as well.
definitely get a D. I think
Tim
that's
Smith,
one
is he going to come back?
that
He's getting on as well.
yeah, that's the thing. I think that's the thing that we were looking at Sheffield coming in because they brought in these offensive guys, and then obviously they wanted to keep the Sheffield DNA, and they sort of brought in these sort of guys that had been playing for Sheffield for ages, obviously in D,
Which I don't think
and
was too bad for
yeah,
this first season.
no, it wasn't a bad thing, but I think now we're getting into this system. You want to sort of see progression. I think the progression is going to be bring some new identity in, and I think bring in some of these import D men. See if there might be a Brit in the pipeline. Obviously, I'm looking at sort of Reece Kelly.
Yeah,
He's obviously come to Steelers.
he's
I
just
think
signed with Steelers as well
a lot of people have obviously are going to be looking at that. Like that could be a guy that sort of balances out his minutes sort of with both teams. So he's
because he was
another guy that
seventh
you
D
can look
last
at.
year.
Yeah, so he's a guy that you can look at. You think about him when he signed for Steelers. You're thinking, is he going to be sort of you know moving to Steel
Good old
Dogs?
debate.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah,
another
it's
guy
interesting.
there. So yeah, Sheffield are lucky because they're in the north. There's a naturally bigger player pool in the north. There's a lot of exciting young guys in the north as well. Um, and Sheffield does look like quite an attractive place to play. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I think they go against everything if they go and sign an import goalie. By the way,
Oh yeah,
I'll actually be quite
they
frustrated if they go import goalie.
they shouldn't go in Paul goalie.
Yeah,
No way.
I think they've got three, well,
Yeah,
two main ones in Norton and Crow there to really play around with, and especially back end of the season, Crow looked really good, and Norton's got a point to prove as well. So I think they'll stick with those two.
yeah,
If they
yeah.
choose to re-sign, that is. Um, Peterborough Phantoms then, and obviously they've already re-signed one of their imports in Cam Huff, which is a fantastic re-sign, and you've got that top centre, which I would love at Swindon. We'll get to them in a second, but we've got that. They've got that top centre in Cam Huff. Do they go import defenseman? Will they re-sign Levine? I assume they probably will because we know Slava likes his import. He likes his goalie to be the main guy, doesn't he? He has to have a backbone to the team. Whether that's Levine or not, we'll have to see. But I think we're both agreement they'll probably go import goalie again next season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they will.
And I think you've got that defense. it's tough because you've got some older guys now who in Tom Norton, you've got Scott Robson, you've got Bouglas, he's not old, but he's been around for a while now. Do you bring in that import defenseman? Do you help out the top six and go with an import forward to go on that second line to add a bit of depth? It's Nathan Salem. I mean, flipping heck, he's been fantastic back end of the season. He was brilliant in playoffs. So where would you go, Dan? Would you get an import D man on top of the goalie, or would you max out that forward core and trust that the defensive system they play is going to be all right not to get an import D?
I think,
Or get a both, one who can play D or forward. Have some options because Cam Huff's
yeah,
dropped in at D
yeah,
sometimes.
he can play D. It's tough because the way we know Sava plays, he plays a defensive style anyway. He brings all the forwards back in defense. So could you just get a few two-way sort of import forwards that can play both ends of the ice, and then you
Is
can stick
Lackanen going
with
to
the
carry on as well? We'll have to
yeah.
see.
There's always questions about that, but you can sort of the D that you've got now will be fine with the forwards coming back and supporting them. So
That's a good point. Yeah,
you've got there's young D men in that team that are coming up.
Ben
Um,
Skatonis as well.
the big one for me is going to be Baron. I'm interested to
Baron,
see
yeah.
if he stays or if he goes.
He's had that
Um,
two-way with Nottingham, hasn't
yeah,
he?
and we said it in the podcast. He's had a bit of a for his standards. He's had a bit of a downer year.
He didn't. He's
Um,
not had as good a year as the year before, I think.
yeah, so because he set his standards very high the year
Yeah,
before. So it'll be interesting if he spends another year in the national, or he gets an opportunity, obviously playing up. That'll be interesting. I think if they do lose Baron, I think maybe go down the import D route. But
yeah,
obviously it all depends on who comes back and sort of where
yeah.
to go. But if you can get the decor that you had this year back, I would go with going with the forwards and just
Get
sort
that
of playing
extra.
that defensive style of hockey that they play anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Whole Seahawks. I think this is a simple one. They can score all the goals they want. They need they flipping need a Ryan Wells or Noah McMullen. Stick Ryan Wells or Noah McMullen in that decor. They concede a lot less goals and they still have the offensive power. Do we need to say any more, Dan? Like I think Brock Bartholomew was brilliant. Offensively is one of the best defensemen we've seen in terms of getting points, and he just fit that whole way of playing. But for me, you don't have to throw your offensive like minded play out the window because the likes of McMullen and Wellesley still were able to offer that offense and get points, but they cared about their defense. So you're never gonna like. I think Ryan's a one in a million. Like he is just that good. But a player of that caliber, a defenseman of that caliber, just to come in and slot in the decor.
Yeah, I mean, you can play this offensive style of hockey, but at the end of the day, you want to win trophies, and you're not going to win trophies playing like that. You
Yeah.
need to sort of have that sustainability at the back. It'll be interesting to see if they go with an import goalie. The
Yeah, I was going to
goalies
ask that.
that
Yeah.
they had last year sort of didn't have the year that they were expecting. They thought having that little tandem going would sort of bring the best out of the goalies. But it was a a bit of a down year for them. So it'll be interesting if they go with an import goalie or if they go with two import D.
I mean, they
Even
should have. For me, you
they've got enough Brit
you've
D
got
there.
Phillips. If
Yeah,
Phillips can stay fit, play less minutes,
you got
because
Deck.
yeah, if you re-sign Deck, having Deck, Phillips, and import D, do they keep Hayward? Who knows? But Hodgkinson did a really good job, I thought. You've got Tommy Spraggan coming in, Callum
Yeah,
McGill if he re-signs. You've got Stubley. Like they just need that one guy now, I think, who you can just rely on, who's going to be the house. And I think Ryan Wells revolutionised Swindon's defence. Well, if Hull can get that one guy to do it, they've now got that extra import slot. It's a no-brainer for me. But
yeah,
you're right, the goalkeeping, you do possibly have to look at it. If you give McLaughlin the net back, does he have a much better season? I think he probably would. But you've then got the headache of Dima as well. He is the big game goalie, but then he struggled a bit in playoffs. So Matty's got a few options, which he does need to think over. So interesting one for Hull, but I do fully expect him to get an import D man. Swindon Wildcats then, and I was happy with last season. I thought we played some really good hockey. Obviously we had Ryan, who I fell in love with the way he plays. I've like just I haven't seen an import D man play for Swindon. We had Kenton Smith's brother, Mark Smith, but I was very young. But Ryan's been unbelievable. Of course, I'd love it if we were able to keep Ryan. But I've said to you, Dan, obviously we're quite an older team now. You got the likes of Aaron, CJ, who's been around for a long time, Bebris, who's been around for a while. Glenn Billings getting older, even though I think he's still your first, second line centre. I would love Swindon to go out and get a Cam Huff, or a Sean Miller, someone who's going to dominate and is going to be that centre, or like a Sam Tremblay-esque. I'd love that for Swindon. Yeah, I just think you need a younger centre who's got a bit more legs, and you can then have that centre punch, that three centre punch of the import, Glenn Billing, and then Aaron Nell as well if he plays next season. What do you think?
I think Swindon are in a very good situation because they've got one of the top Brit netminders in the
Yeah.
league. They've got some top Brit D-men. They've got Bradley, they've got Plews, they've got O'Connor, they've got Jamie Smith has obviously come up. Godfrey, if he stays, you've got Godfrey there that can do a job. Obviously, if you can keep Wells, that's a dream. If you can't, I would look at an import D-man again because
I would as well.
It's having an import in that decor just sort of is the icing on the cake, I think. And then you're lucky again because you've got some top Brit forwards as well. You've got, like you said, you've got Billing, you've got Chris Jones has been around, you've got Reed Sayers coming up, you've got
Gosty if he
obviously
stays.
yeah, you've got Shaw, you've got Lipsy. They're obviously young guys that are firing. They've sort of come leaps and bounds over the past few years. So you've got a good little foundation there. And again, you're another team that just add a few more spots to that team, and you're fine. Like you've always been there. You just never had that finishing touch because I would say the age I think catches up to you a bit at the end. But yeah, if you can add some solid imports to that team, I think you're definitely there competing again.
Obviously, you're going to miss out on Jake's goals. But I think with this extra import slot, anyways,
You can replace that though.
you're gonna replace it, and then you've got an extra import to come in, and maybe you get a centre who's a dominant. I'd love that, but we'll see. I trust Aaron on what he's going to sign, and I'm excited. I cannot wait for this off season. I said on Twitter there are 45 import slots still to be filled. I'm sure a lot of them have re-signed already, but the only ones which have signed is Owen Sobchak, Cam Huff, and I'm missing one out, Dan.
Sommer.
Sommer, yeah, Sommer. Those are the only three which have officially been signed. Or announced. So you've got 45 imports to come in. I can't wait. The previews are going to be so fun. But yeah, Swindon, I think just a few little tad changes. You don't need to change loads, and Ben O'Connor's massive anyways. And you can try and compete for that league. MK then. I think the main focus for them is just adding, again, not changing too much, Dan, but just tweaking it so they can get that league title, because that's what they need to get. They've done really well to get that playoff. They've got the monkey off the bat. They've won that big trophy. Forsberg, I think I'd be doing everything I can if I'm Tim Wallace to get Forsberg to re-sign. Bit like if Wells, if you can get him to re-sign, brilliant. But we were speaking in the car, and you've got Headley now. If you can have Headley curling back next season, again, that's fine. You've got your goalie sorted. With all the firepower they've got, the Brit forwards, the Brit firepower, the Brit depth, do they go to import defensemen again, Dan?
Yeah.
Obviously, it depends who they re-sign, because you've still got Nag, Salisbury, Malik, Griffin, Solder, who I think is criminally underrated, Ben Solder. But you've also got those forwards. It's like they've got so many good players. Like, where do they go with this extra import slot?
The tell and tale will be how many of those Brits they stick around.
Yeah.
Like if they can keep that same Brit core, I would just say go with put them all into forward. I don't think
Really?
I don't think put obviously you've obviously got one import D,
Yeah.
but put the other three I'd put into the offense. So I think you're fine with that D. Um, they challenge Leeds right to the final
Yeah.
weekend with that D. They've obviously you've got Headley behind them as well. If they had Forsberg for the whole year, I think it might have been a bit different. I
Mhm.
think Forsberg was such a big addition.
He suited the national
I
more than
can't praise that
Spatterford.
guy. I can't praise that guy enough. Um, but yeah, I think put it all into the offense. The thing that MK have got, which is very lucky, is their Brits put up import numbers. Like they
Downey,
can fill an import
Venus,
spot. Like that's what I mean. That's
Shaw Norris.
Venus will be interesting. We've spoken about Venus. If they can keep him, that'll be big. If not, that's going to be quite a big one to fill. Um, but again, there's other Brits that obviously that they can attract to that team. You've got people speaking about Talbot, obviously.
Clements.
Yeah, has talked about that as well. So there's Brits that can come into that team and just and spot straight in. Um, and then the imports you can sort of don't have to go for these offensive minded imports. You can go for again these two-way imports.
I
Um,
quickly let me butt in. If Wallace is to go to the bench, you need some. I think Wallace needs to sign him. He needs to
yeah,
sign himself.
like
He needs
a
to
third
sign.
line import.
He needs to sign a Wallace, which is maybe a few years younger, because I don't think you're going to sign a 39-year-old. But you need to sign Wallace, don't you? You have to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, having Wallace on that third line was a cheat code.
Yeah.
That worked so well. It was one of the best lines, one of the best third lines, I'd say.
What was
Just
it?
the way
Wallace, Rutkiss,
and
and
Hamill.
Ham.
Yeah, like that line was perfect because you had obviously Hamill and Rutkiss, they don't stop skating for 60 minutes. Like they just
And they'll
skate.
do their defensive work.
And then you've got Wallace that can just he played in the NHL. Like I don't think we have to
Really? I
talk
don't
about
think we
Wallace.
mentioned.
Like we don't have to talk about him. He just plays the game his own way. He plays it perfectly, and he was just a perfect player to have in between those two guys. So yeah, if you can get a solid veteran import who can play on that third line, I think that's perfect for MK.
Oh, Charlie's making an appearance.
No, not this guy.
Oh no, he's not. He's backed out.
Uh,
But yeah, I agree. The final team then, this has been a long episode actually of us just talking, is the Leeds Knights, and it's going to be a lot of change, Dan. A lot of change in terms of faces coming in, purely because you've got Hayward who's retired, you've got a minimum of three imports to come in. I think obviously Gospel's just re-signed. That's probably the best news you
big.
can hear from a Leeds fan's perspective. You don't have to worry about your goalie. You've got the best goalie in the league that of the last 3 years re-signed. So do they? I think they just go three import forwards, one import defenseman again. I
Yeah.
think can we agree on that? I think they just. I think it's just about Aldridge signing the right players.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a third line locked up. Like, obviously not signed, but they've got a third line locked down. If they can re-sign those guys,
Yeah.
don't need to touch that third line. Like that
Well,
line is perfect.
I do think Braden is going to make a step up this year. I think this is the time with Hayward retiring. Maybe it's not at centre, but you can maybe chuck him in at centre some games. But I do think this is the time for Finn. If you really do want him to progress, I actually think he does need to move on from that third line eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we've always said that third line isn't a third line
Yeah,
like
I
we
agree.
know
Yeah,
it.
I get that.
Like it's a third line that sort of gets the regular ice time. They just play perfectly as that sort of group. But yeah, I do agree. I think Finn deserves that top six spot. Obviously he's made his way onto the power play.
Yeah.
He's got that opportunity. So yeah, I think giving him the top six would be beneficial for both sides. I think Leeds and Braden's side as well.
But you can
Um,
go back to that third line if you do need to as well.
yeah, you've always got that option, which is good. You can obviously always switch up. Um, But the only worry for me is then who sort of fills in that spot on the third line.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's the thing. Leeds have got that attraction. Obviously winning the league back to back to back. Anthony was right in the way that like it's I don't think it will be hard to replace the imports because you can go, well, we're in the we make the playoffs every year, we win the league, and we always compete for the cup. So come to us. So I don't think they will have a problem with attracting the Brits. It's again, it's
the
just finding the right ones.
the thing that I will say is if Braden did move up to the top six, that leaves a slot on that third line for another young guy to come up
Yeah.
and build his way into that lead system.
Edgar's
Like
Vengus.
anything like that.
Watch out.
Like you've got guys there that you can come into that sort of line. You've obviously, if they do resign, you've got Innes and you've got Ollie that can obviously they know how to run that line, and then they can bring another young guy into that gritty sort of play style. And then that's another guy that can sort of grow up into the lead system. So that's another young guy that you've brought through. So it does open up that spot for that, but it will be interesting to see what imports they get and like I said earlier in the podcast, what sort of style of import they go for. Do they go
Yeah.
for the same style as a Baron, or do they go for more of a powerhouse forward like a Bricknell, like a Cooper that they had? Obviously, I know Cooper was unbelievable, but
Or
do they go?
Brooks, like a Zach
Yeah,
Brooks.
do they go with a guy like that? Obviously, the imports that they've gone for this year, Baron and Bissonnette, they're not the guys that are gonna they're not going to score. Obviously, I know Baron did score four, but they're not going to score you like 4 or 5 goals a game. Like they're not that type of guy. So it
They're
will
not.
be
You got
interesting.
Kieran Brown for that. You got
Yeah,
Kieran Brown for
it'll
that.
be interesting to see what imports they do get. But with Hayward going, they do need to get an import to replace him. I think.
Yeah, big import centre. But yeah, we've talked enough now. It's been a long, juiced episode, so we might not have an episode maybe next week. It might be a week and a half or 2 weeks. We'll have to see. I'll try and get an interview on top of that, but we'll make sure there's enough signings to talk about on our next episode, and I'll think of something fun like we've just done here, which we can go on the next one. See which guests we can bring in. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, Dan.
No worries.
Have to see if Charlie does come back for the next
Nah,
episode or whether he's taking the
nah.
summer off. I'm sure if Malas re-signs, he'll be straight back here on in a flash. But we hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm sure people won't mind the long ones because it just keeps them in the loop in this off season. So yeah, thank you for all the support over the last year. Last couple of years actually, it's been unbelievable. Do follow our socials at Macca's Talk Hockey. I'll be doing statsy posts throughout the year, giving our thoughts on all the sign-ins throughout the season because I think we're going to see the most player movement and obviously with all these new imports coming in we've seen since the national. So and Basingstoke as well. Who are they going to sign? Which coach? Which players? I'm sure Dan's looking forward to talking about that. So we'll catch you in the next episode, whenever that is. Peace.